Hey guys, my name is Pansy and welcome to my BDO 2021 tier list for Endgame PVE. In this video I'm going to go over each of the classes and rate them in a tier list of my opinion. Just note, this is not end all be all. Just because I say a class is A rank doesn't mean it can't do better. So it really depends on you, your gear, your knowledge, your practice in a certain grind rotation, as well as just you as a player. Skill is such a big factor in this game, so keep that in mind and let's get started right after this message. Black Desert Online is a fast-paced action combat MMORPG. Having a high FPS and low latency gives you a significant advantage over others. That's why I personally use exit lag to reduce my ping from a fluctuating 80 to 120 down to a stable 68 to 70. Use the link in the description down below for a free 3-day trial, and if you like it, use the code PANSY for 20% off your next purchase. Be sure to follow me on twitch.tv/I'mPansy. I stream every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. Like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Over 80% of the people who watch my videos are not subscribed. Every comment and like really helps. Let's get started. Alright, let's kick this off with Mystic. Mystic is my main and the class I know the best, and I love the class. It's one of the best classes I played in the game. It's very fast-paced, in your face, a lot of protections, a lot of CCs, a very strong class for PvP. I really do enjoy playing her for PvP, but in PvE, when you compare her to my second main, Striker, she's lacking. So here are her advantages in PvE. When Mystic first came out and all the way until Succession release, Awakened Mystic was a strong grinder, and even till now is a really good grinding class. So what happened when Succession came out is she became a straight up DPS class instead of like a tanky utility based class who can grind well. So in terms of her trash loot and her PvE damage output, she's pretty decent. I'd say she's middle of the pack, but her advantage lies in her utility in the sense that she has a lot of protection, CCs, mobility. Her protections are really insane for Succession especially, because you have Thunder Pound, which is on a 3-second cooldown, and a Frontal Guard, and you have Soul Basher, which is a super armor on a 3-second cooldown, and you can rotate between them pretty easily. Because of that, I was able to start grinding at Kratuga with 305 DP. I was able to start grinding Sakraya with 318 DP, no problem. So I think that's one of the advantages you have to take into account. In terms of the raw number of trash loot, she is a bit lacking, but if you guys main a Mystic, absolutely don't worry about it. Don't even think you need to re-roll. It's a solid class. For now, we'll keep her at A rank, but if you're very skilled, you can definitely push any of these classes up a rank, depending on how well you play, how well you've practiced, how familiar you are with the class and such. Next up is Striker. Striker is a phenomenal class. Let's talk about Awakening first. Awakening is not as good as Succession in my opinion for grinding unless you really stack the AP and you overgear the rotation by a considerable amount. But in terms of PvP, he's very strong. Insane damage, great mobility, decent protection, and he has 2 grabs. So Awakened Striker is phenomenal in its own right. But when you bring it into endgame PvE, Succession is king. He has a simple damage rotation. His add-ons are great. You get a 30 AP, 30 monster AP add-on, which is spammable on Wolf's Fang, and it really changed the game for Striker. He was always like top tier for grinding, but once the add-on change came in, he was undisputed. He's the king. He's just such a strong class because his skills just hit so hard. Whenever I play Mystic and then I go to Striker, I'm always impressed by the amount of damage he pulls out for such little effort. So for that, Striker S tier. Alright, next up is going to be Witch. Witch and Wizard are really good classes. Early game, they were always strong because Awakening skills were really good for them. And Succession is really strong late game as well. So I think Witch and Wizard are both really strong classes. As for Witch, she is better in PvE. At least that's the general consensus. But Wizard would be a little bit better for PvP because he has the double blink. So I would like to put them in the A+ category, but I wouldn't put them undisputed A+. They really hover between A+ and A in my opinion, but that really depends on the players, but the overall potential of them is lower A+. So for now, this is where we're going to keep them. But they're really good classes. They got it all. They have a great versatile kit. They got your heals, you got your protection, they have really good range damage. I think they're solid classes. I think they belong in the A+ rank. But like I said, depending on your skill, you can bring out the real potential of a class. Next up is Ninja and Kunoichi. So ninjas are really strong classes. We all know they are the undisputed #1 in 1v1 PvP, along with Kuno. Both of them are really strong for 1v1. In terms of PvE, they're a bit lacking compared to some of the other classes, but that's not to say it doesn't have potential. Ninja, who's really skilled at his class, can definitely compete with the A+ tier classes, no problem. But I'm gonna put them at A. I'm gonna put Ninja at A, and I'll probably put Kuno one tier below, because her endgame PVE grind when you get to the endgame spots, it's pretty good. I've seen plenty of Kunos who are pulling like enough trash loot to compete with A rank, but it is a bit lacking compared to their kit for PVE versus what they have for PvP. So Ninja A rank, if you're good, you can definitely, like I said, push your class up to the next tier. But for now, I'm going to keep it at A rank and Kuno at B. I think she needs a little bit more. She used to be decent with Awakening comparing to other Awakening classes, but I think she just needs a little bit more to be able to compete with the other classes head to head. But because they are so powerful in 1v1, I think they're still solid classes to play. Now, forgive me for ranking your Kuno waifus as low as I did, guys, but, you know, we just got to be as honest as possible here. Hopefully, they get a little bit more love and improvement. But let's move on to Guardian right now. Guardian is an interesting class because she is one of the classes which are considered to be low APM, where it's not as intensive to grind for long hours. You don't have to maintain like insanely high APM as you would for a Tamer or Berserker or Ninja. Comparatively, it's a lot more chill. So she also has a lot of damage in her Awakening. Big AoEs, good super armor, really tanky, and does great damage. So she's a solid class. But when you compare her to the endgame spots, like the newer endgame spots, she does fall off a little bit, but she's still a solid A to A+. For this ranking, keep her at the #1 spot for A rank. And definitely, if you're a good player with a lot of gear, you can definitely pull A+ and, you know, compete with the other classes up there. But she's a solid class, definitely a great choice to play if you want something chill and not too intense. Next up is Berserker. So Berserker is a class that we ranked pretty low in the original tier list for beginners and newer players. The reason being was he didn't really suit the grind spots as well as some of the other classes. It was very high skill cap and you need a lot of practice. But in this tier list, when you get to the endgame spots, I expect the player to know how to play their class effectively and bring out its full potential. So I'm going to put Berserker in the A rank spot, the A+ rank spot, because he rightfully deserves it. Really good damage, great utility, decent mobility, and you also have your spot in large scale and PvP content. All around, Berserker is a solid class to grind on. And if you really enjoy the playstyle, you can really shine with it. All right, next up is Ranger and Archer. So Ranger was my first class in BDO. I absolutely love the playstyle of it, and I really have a soft spot for Rangers. However, in terms of endgame PvE, they're considered to require a lot more gear compared to other classes to pull the same numbers in some areas. Now, they do have their place in the game in terms of their PvP capabilities and their range and whatnot, but I think they're a bit lacking, and ever since they released Succession, there was hope for them to, you know, get back to a top tier spot, but they nerfed Succession considerably right off the bat. So I'd say Succession Rangers are pretty middle of the pack, but I feel like they really do need some buffs. So I'm going to put them at B rank, because they do require a decent amount of gear in order to be quite comfortable in spots where other classes don't. And also their damage is a bit lacking compared to other classes. Like a 245 striker can go into Star's End and start grinding as if it's nothing, but Rangers need a lot more damage in order to be as effective. So also, let's talk about Archer now. Archer, I think, is also in a bit of a rough spot. Like if you put him in Ackman, like depending on the spot, he can be really good. A decent archer can like pull like A rank worth of trash loot and everything, and if you put him in Ackman, he's like almost pretty much S tier over there. It really depends, but I think he's also pretty lacking. He does need some work. The playstyle of Archer, I just don't like that you have some burst potential where you have to go into a close range to deal that damage. Now, I guess some people would say that's a good trade-off, but At the same time, I think it is a bit lacking compared to other classes in endgame spots. I do see high level archers grind pretty decently, so you can put them up in A rank, but for this list, I'd prefer them down here. And also, they're better than Kuno, I guess. But overall, if you're grinding things like not endgame spots, if you're going for like the potion piece and just normal spots, which are pretty easy mobs, Archer's pretty good, like no problem. But when you compare him to like somewhere in Sakraya or Star's End, other classes are better. All right, next up, let's talk about Sork. Sork is a very powerful class, as we know. In terms of PvP, she's a really strong 1v1 fighter, but really shines in 1vx potential where she can go into a group of players and take them on. In terms of PvE grinding, recently we've seen a lot of buffs to Awakening Sork, so I think Succession and Awakening are pretty close to each other, Succession being just a tiny bit ahead, but a very powerful class, great iframes, great mobility, and I think it's a solid class, good damage, A+. And if I was to choose where to put these A+ ranks, I'd like move it like this, 1 second. I'd say Sork is the best of the A+ ranks almost. Other classes can come close to it, and if you're really good, I know if you're really overgearing a spot, you'll compete with like S rank classes, but that's the reason being is once you overclear a rotation, it pretty much hits the cap of the trash loot there, but I think they deserve the spot of A+. Next up is the #1 waifu class of the game according to Pearl Abyss's statistics, that is Dark Knight. Dark Knight is pretty strong. Succession packs an insane punch. The damage is ridiculous if you're 1v1ing a Dark Knight, but overall for PvE, I think it's a solid class to grind on. I think it's middle of the pack in terms of trash loot. A really good player can do much better, but overall, it's got pretty much everything you want in a DPS class. A bit of mobility, good damage. It's a solid class to pick. A rank. Alright, now for the Sand Ninja, Hashasin. So, Hashasins, when they came out, they came up to a huge hype, but I think it fell off in terms of interest of the community because they are a difficult class to master. There is a lot of potential and they're very powerful in PvE grinding, pretty good in PvP. It's just a difficult class, high APM, high skill cap, so I think that's why people shy away from it, but S rank all around. It's a powerful grinding class, definitely a great choice. Takes some time to master, but once you do, it's very rewarding, and I think you can't really go wrong with Hashasin if you want to go grinding. I guess it's a bit more effort than Striker, but still great potential to pull high trash numbers. Let's talk about Lon now. So there was a pretty decent debate going on in my stream when I was talking about Lon and her potential in PvE, and I know you Lon supporters, you Lon players, really love your characters. I won't judge. I don't know what's going on there, but you are right in one thing. She has very high PvE potential with Succession. She can pull really high numbers comparing to Hashasin and Striker in some areas. So because of the area, like Sakraya is a very high-end spot. So I think it is worth noting her potential and placing her in the S rank along with those guys, because that's where it really matters, the endgame spot, which brings in the big money. So just to talk a little bit about Succession and Awakening Lon. Awakening Lon has decent sustain, she has a grab, and she's really good for 1v1s, but in terms of PvE, she does, fall off a bit. She's pretty middle of the pack in terms of Awakening, but with Succession, her grinding potential really goes up because she has great super armors, really good damage, and pretty decent mobility. She's a strong class. So personally, I'd say between A+ and S rank. For the sake of this tier list, I'll put her in S rank, but a very solid class for PvE grinding. And also for Lon, because she can fly, she can do rotations other classes can't do. She has that flexibility, and that really gives her an edge over the other A+ rank classes. Next up, Musa and Meiwa. Let's talk about Meiwa first, because I really love the class. I really wish Awakening was stronger, that I could play her for PvE grinding and stuff, because endgame is not as good as what she was early game, so it's really disappointing. Awakening Meiwa was such a beautiful class, but Succession's actually really strong. In terms of grinding, I know the fanboys would be like, oh, she's the best grinder. Nah, she's middle of the pack, A rank. Pretty solid A rank, that too. If you're really good at her, you can definitely compete with A+ rank classes, no problem. But, you know, like I said, Guardian also fluctuates between the two. But just for the sake of this list, so we have some definitive answers here, I'm going to keep her at A rank, but just keep that in mind. If you're really good at the class, you can push it a bit higher. Musa, on the other hand, he's screwed. The number of Musas who rerolled to Hashasin when he came out, oh man. In terms of PvP, he's actually decent. It depends on you as a player, your skill. If you're facing a class who has a lot of super armors and protections, they'll just super armor rotate because you don't have a grab, you don't have that reliable CC. But if you are patient and if you do have a lot of practice and knowledge of your own class, you can compete with pretty much anyone. It really depends on you as a player. But I think in terms of PvE, he needs help. He needs help. I'd even throw him in the rework please category just because his PvE game really doesn't feel good. Like, he doesn't have that impact of a striker. He has mobility, but what are you going to do if you're not pulling the same kind of damage? I mean, it's a considerable difference in the trash loot once you're pulling like 500 or more less than another class. So rework please for Musa. Next up, the warrior. So I love playing warrior. It was my first class for seasonal. However, I had to stop because it hurt my pinky. Just spamming the shift button, it didn't feel good for me, but I must say it has a very high potential in terms of playability and capability in terms of PvE as well as PvP. It's one of those classes that if you master it, you can be a god. So in terms of Succession and Awakening, they both are decent to play. I personally prefer Awakening just because it looks cooler, but one of the things you have to remember about Warrior is having a high FPS is important, having low latency is important, and those greatly affect a warrior's damage output compared to other classes. I think he's the most reliant, one of the most reliant. So with that reason, A+. Next up, another class I really like, Valkyrie. So Valkyrie was my second seasonal character, and I think she's a solid class. Her Awakening spec used to be really good for grinding before Successions came out. Like, it used to be, if you were ranking the top 5, Awakened Mystic and Awakened Valkyrie were definitely up on the list. They were really good, and even now it's a solid spec to play, but Succession is also really powerful. So Valks have the advantage of having a little bit more resistance than other classes, which really shines in PvP. In terms of 1v1 rankings, I think she's right behind Ninja and Kuno. Like, they can be really powerful if you know how to play them, and solid class all around. I think like in certain spots like Star's End, that's where she really shines. So overall, A+. I think she's in the lower end of the A+ spectrums, but nonetheless, very powerful class. Alright, now for two of the lolly classes. Shy is a very good class. Her advantage is she does have those affinities to life skills, but she can go to other grind spots sooner than other classes. Like, for example, Sakraya, you can go in with a lot less DP than you would require for, say, a Sork or a squishier class. So she's a solid grinder. She has a good grind game going. In terms of trash loot, I don't think she competes with some of the top classes until you really overgeared the rotation. But in terms of playability, I think if you enjoy playing her, if you enjoy her playstyle, she's a solid class to play. I put her right there at A rank. Tamer, on the other hand, she can be A rank, but she needs a lot of effort. Like, compared to other classes, you need to put a lot more effort to bring her in terms of her grind game up to the A rank classes. In the lower end spots, in early game and in the weaker areas where pulling more mobs is an advantage, she's really good. But when you get to a spot where you don't really need that, it really takes away from her specialty, right? So I think she's one of the classes where if you're decent, you can like compete with other classes, but she really needs some help in my opinion. That's just me. So I'm going to toss her in the rework please category because I'd really like to see her do a bit better and for it to be a more popular class. Because in terms of PvP and small scale PvP and 1v1, she's really good. She's a strong class. So to reflect that, I think there needs to be a little bit better grind game to, you know, give something to the tamer players to be able to call her their main. So anyway, that's just my opinion. Let's move on. And last but not least, Nova. She is the latest of the bait characters and a lot of people fanboyed after her, but after seeing her Succession and her Awakening, opinions did change. However, her awakening can pull really good trash loot numbers and is a solid grind class. Takes practice, but she has a lot of potential. Her succession needs some work in my opinion. I'd say it's like, you know, between A and B at best, but her awakening is really formidable. I think she can be at A plus or A rank. So I know a lot of these classes are falling under the A plus category. It's because they all have that potential. And Nova does too in her awakening state. Succession, not so much. So I wish I could differentiate this list a bit more and stagger it down. However, the thing is, this game is actually pretty balanced in the sense of PvE grinding. A lot of classes are in the middle of the pack. Some are like outliers, some are pretty in need of help, but for the most part, you know, they are really there. And to say apples to apples, one is better than the other is a bit difficult because it really depends on your skill and how much practice you have. For example, as a striker, when I first started grinding in Stars End, I was pulling like 4.8 to 5k trash loot with the same AP after practice and min-maxing the rotation, and after I started pulling the mobs properly, that went up to 5.3 plus. So it really depends on you as a player and how much knowledge you have in the game, experience, and practice. And a lot of these classes, like I said, can go up a tier depending on how well you play. I definitely don't see a Kuno going up to A plus, but definitely can compete with the other A rank classes, no problem. It depends on you as a player, but in terms of their mechanics and their what they have in their kit, I think this is a pretty solid list. Musa and Tamer are the special characters here, the special classes, which I think really need some help, need some reworks going. Even Meiwa Awakening, I always talk about Meiwa, but I think this is a solid list. I like the way it's looking, and let me know in the description down below which class you guys think needs a major nerf or a buff, because you know, we got to start being vocal now that Pearl Abyss is taking over for Cacao in terms of North America and Europe. I think now's the chance we can get our voices heard and, you know, maybe make some change happen. So let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please do like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on twitch.tv/I'mPansy, and also check out Exit Lag, links in the description down below. Code Pansy for 20% off. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.